My wife wanted freedom, until her new life destroyed ours. It was one of those lazy Sunday afternoons where nothing seemed urgent. The rain outside tapped softly against the windows, and the faint smell of Emily's coffee drifted into the living room. I was sprawled on the couch, halfway through a book, when I noticed she wasn't reading or scrolling like usual. She was just sitting there at the kitchen table, staring into her mug as if it might give her an answer to some unspoken question. "Can we talk?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Tension, maybe guilt. "Sure," I said, placing my book face down on the coffee table. "What's up?" She hesitated for a few seconds, twisting the mug in her hands. "I've been thinking. I think I need more." I gave a small smile, trying to keep it light. "More what? More vacations? More date nights?" "I could," she interrupted, shaking her head. "No, not like that. I mean more from life. More freedom." She looked at me then, eyes unblinking. "I want to try an open marriage." The words hit me like cold water. For a moment, I just stared, wondering if this was some kind of sick joke. "You what?" "I've been with you since I was 21, she began, her voice shaking slightly. "I never had the chance to explore, to see what else was out there before we got serious. I love you, but I feel like I'm missing something, missing a part of myself." I blinked, still processing. "So you want to sleep with other people?" She flinched. "It's not just about sex. It's about finding myself. I swear, this isn't because of someone else. But if I don't do this now, I'm afraid I'll resent you one day." I felt a strange mix of anger, confusion, and fear. "Are you telling me this so I'll agree? Or so you can do it without feeling guilty?" Her eyes filled with something between sadness and determination. "I'm telling you because I don't want to lie to you. I want to be honest." I leaned back on the couch, staring at her. Every instinct screamed to say no. But I loved her, more than I loved my own comfort. If saying yes was the price of keeping her, maybe it was worth paying. After a long pause, I said, "All right, if this is what you need, I won't stop you." Her shoulders relaxed, and a small smile tugged at her lips. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you. I promise this won't change how I feel about you." But as I looked into her eyes, I realized it already had. At first, it almost felt normal. The first couple of weeks after our agreement, Emily still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still asked about my day over dinner. We even watched our usual shows together in the evenings. I convinced myself that maybe she just needed a little freedom to realize what she already had. But then I started noticing shifts. Her phone became an extension of her hand. She'd smile at incoming messages, sometimes laughing quietly to herself. But when I'd ask, "Who's that?" she'd just say, "A friend," and quickly lock the screen. Her outfits changed too. She started wearing dresses I hadn't seen in years, heels she used to complain were uncomfortable. She'd spend longer getting ready, spritzing on perfume before meeting the girls, and coming home after midnight, smelling faintly of wine and something not quite us. One evening, as she stood in front of the mirror adjusting her earrings, I leaned on the doorway. "So, have you met someone yet?" She froze for half a second, then glanced at me in the mirror. "That's kind of the point of this, isn't it?" she said, a half smile on her lips, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I guess." I tried to sound casual. "I just didn't think it would be so fast." "I'm not rushing," she replied, turning back to the mirror. "I'm just open to possibilities." That night, she came home at 2 in the morning. I pretended to be asleep, but I could hear the soft click of her heels on the floor, the quiet hum of her phone as she typed a message before climbing into bed. Weekends changed too. She started disappearing for art shows, hiking trips, or wine tastings with new friends whose names I'd never heard before. I stayed home, the apartment too quiet, filling the silence with work and TV reruns. I even tried dating myself, swiping through apps, grabbing coffee with a woman named Claire. She was nice, funny even. But the whole time, I kept comparing her to Emily, and it wasn't fair to either of us. Then one night, Emily walked through the door looking radiant. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly messy, her eyes sparkling like I hadn't seen in years. She dropped her purse on the counter, kicked off her heels, and hummed a tune under her breath as she poured herself a glass of water. "You're in a good mood," I said from the couch, trying to keep my voice light. She turned to me with a smile that felt both familiar and foreign. Yeah, it was a good night. She didn't say where she'd been. She didn't have to. I already knew. It happened 2 months later, on a night I hadn't expected. Emily had decided we should host a small get-together for her coworkers and a few friends. I thought it was a good sign. Maybe she wanted to bring people into our space again, include me in her new social world. I was in the kitchen arranging snacks when I heard her voice in the hallway, brighter than usual. A man's deep laugh followed. When I stepped into the living room, she was standing beside him, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of guy who walked into a room and made it feel smaller. His hair was neatly styled, his jawline sharp, and he carried himself like someone who was used to attention. "This is Ryan," Emily said, smiling at him in a way that made my stomach tighten. "Ryan, this is my husband, Mark." Ryan extended a hand. His grip was firm, his eyes locked on mine without flinching. "So you're the husband," he said with a grin. "She talks about you all the time." I forced a polite smile. "All good things, I hope." He chuckled. "Mostly." The night went on, but I couldn't stop noticing the way she hovered near him. They laughed easily, leaning in close during conversations as if no one else in the room mattered. I caught subtle touches, her hand brushing his arm, his palm at the small of her back when they moved past each other. At one point, I went to the kitchen for more drinks and found them already there, standing just a bit too close. Their conversation stopped the second I walked in. "More wine?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Emily smiled quickly. "Oh yes. Ryan was just telling me about this hiking trip he went on." "Yeah," Ryan added casually. "I think Emily would love it. We were saying we should go sometime." "We," not you and Mark. "Just we." The party ended late. Guests trickled out, leaving me and Emily stacking plates in the kitchen. "So," I said finally, "Ryan, is he?" She didn't look up. "He's a friend, right?" "Just a friend," I repeated, watching her closely. She set down the dishes and met my gaze. "You said you were okay with this." And she was right. I had said that. But seeing them together was different. It wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was real, breathing, standing in my kitchen. That night, when we got into bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every glance, every laugh, every casual touch. For the first time since we'd made the agreement, I realized I might already be losing her. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I'd left work early, a rare thing, hoping to surprise Emily with takeout from her favorite Thai place. The rain had just stopped, the air fresh, and for the first time in weeks, I actually felt a flicker of excitement about seeing her. I opened the front door and froze. Ryan was sitting at our kitchen table. Not just sitting in my chair, wearing a relaxed smile, sipping coffee from one of our mugs like he'd been there 1,000 times before. Emily stood by the counter, laughing at something he'd just said. "Oh, you're home early," she said, like I was an unexpected guest in my own house. "Ryan's staying for dinner." The words hung in the air. My grip on the paper bag tightened. "Is that so?" "Yeah," Ryan said with that easy confidence. "Emily was telling me about your amazing cooking, but I guess tonight we're going with takeout." He stood, took the bag from my hands before I could answer, and started unpacking it like it was his kitchen. My kitchen. We sat down to eat. Or rather, they talked while I sat there, trying to swallow food that suddenly tasted like ash. They traded inside jokes, little comments about that weekend in the mountains, a weekend Emily had told me was a solo trip to clear her head. I put my fork down. "Do you realize how this looks?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. Emily's smile faltered. "You agreed." I agreed to something I thought we could handle. "Not this," I said, gesturing between them. Ryan leaned back in his chair, smirking faintly. "Mark, I think you're reading too much into this." My eyes locked on his. "I think you should leave." Emily's gaze darted between us, and after a moment, Ryan stood. "All right, I'll see you later," he said to her, not to us. When the door clicked shut, I turned to her. "Do you still love me?" She hesitated. "Not long, maybe a second, but long enough." "I do," she said softly. But her eyes told a different story. That night, we went to bed without speaking. I lay there, staring into the dark, feeling something inside me shift, like a rope snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. After that night, Ryan became a fixture in our lives. At first, he dropped by once or twice a week. Then it was almost every day. I'd come home from work to find his shoes at the door, his jacket on the back of my chair, and his laughter drifting from the living room where he and Emily sat drinking wine. Sometimes they didn't even hear me come in. One evening, I walked into the kitchen to find Ryan at the stove. "Hey man," he said casually, stirring a pot. "Emily told me you love spaghetti. I figured I'd make some for everyone." I stood there, watching him move around like he belonged. "Where's Emily?" "She's upstairs, taking a shower." He smirked. "Long day, I guess." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. I went upstairs, found Emily in our bedroom, toweling her hair. "Why is he cooking dinner in our kitchen?" I demanded. She sighed. "Mark, don't start. He's just trying to be nice." "Nice?" He's acting like this is his house. Her tone sharpened. You're overreacting. This is what an open marriage is. We agreed there wouldn't be strict boundaries. No, I said, my voice low but shaking. We agreed you could explore, not move someone into our lives. She stared at me, arms crossed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I left the room before I said something I'd regret. Dinner that night was tense. Ryan chatted with Emily about a new art gallery, completely ignoring me. I barely touched my food. When Emily went to the kitchen for dessert, Ryan leaned across the table. You know, Mark, he said in a low voice, this could be a lot easier if you just relaxed. I'm not here to take anything from you, unless you let me. I clenched my fists under the table, every muscle in my body screaming to throw him out. But I didn't. I just sat there, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. After dinner, I went for a walk, needing air. When I came back, Ryan's shoes were gone, but Emily was curled on the couch, smiling at her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in. That night, I lay awake again, realizing the truth. This wasn't my marriage anymore. It was theirs, and I was the one being tolerated. It happened on a Thursday evening, the kind of day where I just wanted peace. But as soon as I pulled into the driveway, I saw Ryan's motorcycle parked in front of the house. My chest tightened. Inside, I heard laughter coming from the kitchen, Emily's high-pitched giggle, followed by Ryan's deep voice. I walked in to find them standing close. Emily leaning on the counter, her hand resting casually on his arm as he poured wine. Hi, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily turned, surprised but not guilty. Oh, you're home early. Yeah, I replied flatly, hanging my coat. Didn't know we were having company. Again. Ryan smiled, like he knew exactly what he was doing. Just keeping Emily company while you were out. You work too much, man. I ignored him and opened the fridge, mostly to avoid looking at them. Can we talk, Emily? Alone. Ryan stepped back with mock politeness. I'll give you 2 minutes. He walked to the living room, but I could feel his presence lingering, like a shadow. I turned to Emily. This has gone too far. He's here almost every day. He acts like this is his house. And you? I swallowed hard. You let him. Her eyes hardened. Mark, you're twisting this. I'm happy. For the first time in years, I feel alive. Ryan brings out a side of me I didn't know I had anymore. And what about us? Do we even exist anymore? She hesitated, and that pause hurt more than anything. Maybe we've grown apart. Maybe this is just the natural course of things. I stepped back, my voice shaking. You're saying that like we're talking about the weather. This is our marriage, Emily. Before she could answer, Ryan's voice floated in from the living room. Everything okay in there? I snapped. No, Ryan, everything is not okay. You've been inserting yourself into my life, into my home, into my marriage, and I'm done pretending it's fine. He appeared in the doorway, leaning casually. You think you can tell Emily what she can and can't do? Sounds a bit controlling, don't you think? Get out, I said, my voice low but deadly serious. Ryan smirked. Or what? Emily stepped between us. Mark, stop. You're making this worse. No, Emily, I said, staring past her at him. He goes, or I go, but I will not share my marriage anymore. Silence fell, thick and heavy. Emily's eyes flicked between us, and I could see her choosing, not with her words, but with the way she stepped toward Ryan instead of me. I felt something inside me break. I grabbed my coat and keys. Then I guess I have my answer. And just like that, I walked out, not knowing where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. I drove for hours that night, the city lights blurring past my windshield. My phone buzzed twice. Emily's name lit up the screen, but I didn't answer. I couldn't hear her voice, not after the way she'd looked at me, like I was the obstacle in her new life. Eventually, I ended up at the small motel on the edge of town, the kind of place you stay when you have nowhere else to go. The room smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke, but it was quiet. For the first time in months, quiet felt like a luxury. I sat on the bed, staring at the phone. My thumb hovered over Emily's number. I wanted to scream at her, beg her, reason with her, but deep down, I knew it was useless. You can't fight for someone who's already gone. The next morning, I went back to the house, not to reconcile, but to collect what was left of me. My books, my clothes, a few photos. When I walked in, the air felt different, lighter somehow, as if my absence had already been absorbed into the walls. Emily was in the kitchen, her hair pulled back, a coffee mug in hand. She looked calm, almost too calm. You came back, she said softly. For my things, I replied, not looking at her. She set the mug down. Mark, I didn't want it to end like this. I gave a short, bitter laugh. Didn't you? You've been pushing me out for months, Emily. Ryan was just the final shove. She winced. It wasn't just him. It was us. We stopped being us. I met her eyes for the first time in days. Maybe, but you didn't even try to fix it. Her lip trembled, but she didn't speak. Instead, she stepped aside as I carried a box of my things past her. It was strange. After years of living in that house together, I felt like a guest walking out the door. As I loaded the car, Ryan's motorcycle roared up the street. He pulled in, removing his helmet with that smug grin I'd grown to hate. "Leaving already?" he called out. I didn't answer. Emily walked to the porch, her eyes on me. "Goodbye, Mark." I stood there for a moment, committing the scene to memory. The house we'd built, the woman I'd loved, the man who'd replaced me. Then I got in the car, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. Months later, I'd hear through mutual friends that Emily and Ryan didn't last. But by then, it didn't matter. I'd already rebuilt my life. A smaller apartment, a simpler routine, but a peace I hadn't known in years. Some nights, I'd think of her, not with anger, but with a quiet sadness. Because love doesn't always end with a bang. Sometimes it just fades, until one day, you're strangers again. And that's how Emily became a chapter in my life. One I'd read 100 times, but would never open again.